Hey guys, PurePolygons here, Jacob, and I was gonna show you guys a little bit of an overview of the Procedural Nature Pack, kind of give you some tips and tricks on the best way to create trees and use the river spline tool, and just some simple things like setting up your terrain with painting layers and getting all that going. Alright, so let's get started. First off, I'll just head over here. So this is after you've added the pack to your project, you'll see the folder inside. If you have other files, you'll just find the folder Procedural Nature Pack somewhere within your folders under the main content here. And just as an overview, I'll pop this down and we'll see inside the foliage is where you're going to add everything to your terrain for foliage. Each one is labeled grass, leaves, rocks, small. The landscape layer info, you'll never actually go inside of this folder. I'll show you that in a bit. The materials, here's all your master materials on the top. From these materials you will be creating your material instances. You'll never actually be using these master materials. So you'll just right click, create material instance of whatever type you want and move it into the proper folder. We also have the meshes. Most of these are controlled by either the foliage or the spline blueprints. So the only ones you'll ever actually need for spline meshes, or for meshes, will be rock boulders, possibly the rock small if you want to hand place those instead, but there's actually foliage for these ones so you can paint them if you'd like. And that's about it. The other ones are all being used by the spline tools, and so you never have to worry about going in there. So we'll move on now to spline blueprints. In here we have the master river spline, the tree branch spline, the tree root spline, which is also going to be your tree trunk spline. They're one and the same. You could use the tree branch spline for your roots as well if you want. Just depends on what kind of look you're going for. Then there's also the master tree root with moss. So that's the same as the tree root, except I've just already taken the liberty of applying the proper shaders for it in there, which you can adjust on either of them at any time you want, but I just thought to make it easier. And lastly, the master vine spline. So this is for creating your vines, not the videos, just the the jungle ones. And in here's the textures. You'll never need to go in here either. Most of these are already set up inside the materials, and it's just here to look at if you want to go through and pick one or pick it apart or export it, whatever you want to do with it. So we'll start off by going back to the main folder here and opening up the assets overview scene. Actually cancel that. Let's actually just go ahead and make a terrain first. I think that'll be best, just to give people a chance to make a terrain and kind of know how to get started with these tools inside of their projects. So we'll click on the landscape here at the top. After you click on landscape, here's the grid showing the landscape, and you'll see manage. Make sure you have manage selected and create new. Then from material, we're going to just type in grass, and you'll see these black materials here. These 4 black ones are the terrain blended materials that I've already set up for you. They're all named, so there's grass, dirt, cobblestones, no puddles, with puddles, grass, mud, cobblestones, no puddles, and with puddles. So we'll go ahead and do the grass, dirt, cobblestone, with puddles. Then this terrain's a little bit big for me, so I'm going to change the size down to 7:7. Just for you guys to get an example of this. And the sectors will be 1 by 1. And that looks good for now. So let's create it. And you'll see it's still black. And this is actually my giant painting brush right here. We're going to go into the paint mode. And I'm just going to change the brush size down to 100. Just so it's a little bit more viewable and it's not so giant. And it's going to stay black until you set up the layer info. And that's what I told you about earlier. You don't have to go into the folder layer info. You can just see layer 1, and where it says none, click it, and layer 1's right there, and it'll do that for all the layers. You just click it and drop down, and it's all taken care of for you. So now once you start painting your first layer, you may have to wait for it to compile the shaders, but mine's already actually been compiled just because I had set this up before. And you'll see there's a little bit of holes in here actually, and that's from the tessellation. I'll show you how to fix that too really quickly, but I'm gonna fix it in the update that's coming out pretty soon. Then you can paint your dirt layer on top of there, as well as the cobblestone layer on top of that. And I've provided a puddles layer, so you can actually paint puddles into any part of your terrain as well. And so that's a cool little puddle there for you. The shapes, you can paint any shape you want, anywhere you want, and it just makes a nice puddle. Okay, cool. So I'll really quickly just show you how to fix the holes inside of these materials, because that's going to be kind of annoying for you. So let's go into our materials, and these landscape materials are actually using material functions. So we'll go into the terrain function materials folder and do this for all three of them. So we'll open it up, and you'll see at the top here it says tessellation fade. We're just going to go ahead and zoom in where it's connected to at the top here where it says tessellation on and true, and you can just right click that and break the link. You can also hold Alt and click it, and that'll break the link. So what we'll do now is you'll click and hold true and drag it out and type in scalar, and scalar parameter comes up. Now we want this in the tessellation group so it's easier to find it later. So off to the left here, you still have it selected. You'll click none, and this one actually is only layer 1 textures. Sorry, I was thinking of my master terrain. There's a few different ones, but so we'll just go ahead and do layer 1 because it's not a texture, it's just a layer 1 option. And we'll type this in as tessellation density, because what this is going to do is based off of what number you enter in here, it'll either add verts or remove verts, and we'll set the default value to 1. So if you want a ton of verts, you can increase this to like 10 or 20 or whatever, but it's going to make the tessellation a lot more dense. So just be aware of that. Now that we have created that, we'll copy it, Control C, or right click and copy, and save this material. Then we're going to do this to the other 3 materials under the terrain function. So now we'll just go in here and paste that, Control V, and just pop this right into true, and it disconnects that other one for us. We'll also do this on layer 3 here. Just plug that in, and you see it saves the settings for the group and the parameter names, so you don't have to worry about that. And just save that one as well. So now all those guys are saved, and as soon as this finishes compiling, which there's a lot of shaders, so I'll just start moving on to some of the other features here while this is compiling. The next thing we can take a look at is setting up our foliage. So now that we have the terrain, this is going to be pretty simple. We can just click on foliage up here at the top, and you see where it says drag drop foliage here? You can go into the folder I showed you earlier, just the foliage folder, and let's first just add the grass. So go into the grass folder and select it all, and just drag and drop it, and that's all done for you. So now you can select multiple types of grass if you want, and it just randomly switches between them when we're painting here. And so there's all the grass, starts painting really easily and switching between the different types of grass. If you want to change any of the settings, just select one, and at the bottom underneath it you'll see the density of the grass, the radius, the scaling, so if you want it to scale uniformly or non-uniformly, and then any of the placement settings. You can just take a look through here and mess around with those at your leisure. So we'll go through and actually add the rest of these also. These are all the leaves, such as banana, fern, fern large, fern B, and leaves tree A. Actually, we're going to leave leaves tree A off. That was something that you can actually paint onto the branches if you'd rather paint your leaves that way, which I can show you later, but I tend not to use it. I like the spline mode a lot better. So we'll copy these here. We'll do the same for these guys. Just drag and drop them. It's that simple. I've set it all up for you and set up all the parameters for them and tried to name them in a way to help you understand what it was. Basically, all these are just different small little rocks that you can use if you want. And the different B's, so B1, B2, B3, this is the same mesh with different materials applied to it. So actually, the rocks will all look different. And I'm going to just change my foliage brush size here down to like 100. And so there's a few different rocks that you can just paint like that using the world space normals, so they'll always tile properly and read pretty well in the engine. There's a few other ones here. We can check these guys out. So I'll paint a few of these ones. These ones are kind of cool. This has some of the procedural moss generation on them that you'll see. So it just randomly adds moss to certain ones. And you can always increase the amount of moss and where the moss is placed all within the material instances. So I'll just remove these rocks. Okay, so that's a little bit of an overview of just getting started with the landscape materials and the foliage, and you'll see now also that all those holes that we saw earlier are all gone. So that simple fix with the material functions will totally take care of that problem for you. And like I said, I'm going to get that updated, and that should look a lot better coming up here in the next couple weeks as soon as I can get that on the marketplace. The next thing, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the spline blueprints. So these are the ones that are pretty powerful. They can do quite a few things. The river one, I'm sure a lot of you want to see. So let's go ahead and place some big old rocks in this scene. We'll just grab the boulders, and I like to use, let's go with boulder B2. Take a look at that one. And all these have world space normals on them, as well as a unique 1-to-1 normal. So you'll see the 1-to-1 normal scaling here, but the world space textures actually scale by themselves also, so you won't notice any odd stretching in the texture. You can make these as big as you want, and they'll usually look pretty good. Another thing actually about the rocks before we get started with the terrain material, this has the procedural moss on it, so I'm going to delete this one. And I believe this one has the Vertex Painted Moss. Let's give it a try. It does. Excellent. So I want to show you something with this moss. Let's go ahead and go back into our static mesh mode and scale these up. So we have a nice big rock here. Just like that. And now if you click on this paintbrush, if you paint white onto the surface, it paints in some moss for you. And you can change this, so you can either paint with a grayish color so that it never actually goes all the way up to full white. Oh, whoops, sorry, I gotta click OK first. So you can paint black to remove parts, or white to add the moss back on. And if you change the strength to a bit lower, it doesn't paint quite as quick, and so you can be a bit more careful about where you're placing it. Let's make this a little higher, maybe 0.1, something like that. And the cool thing about the moss here is I actually included a distance-based tiling to it. So you might be able to see somewhere around here and somewhere around here that as I'm zooming out, the tiling is slowly starting to change. So that way, from a distance, you don't see an incredible amount of tiling on the moss, but up close, you're going to get a really nice high fidelity look to it. And it just slowly fades in and out, so it shouldn't be noticeable to most people. Cool, so that's a nice little feature in there. Now I'm just going to build up some sides to where our river is going to be here, just to get some cool foam around it, because the foam only is actually visible if there's rocks and stuff in the way to cause the foam. And I'm just going to kind of move these guys around in some random shapes, scale them a little bit, because I designed the rock so that you can actually get a lot of use out of it. Just this one rock here. And there's a couple different versions of it, and you can make it look completely different, and even just jam it in and out of other rocks. And most of the time that'll read pretty well, even just because it has that world space texture on it. So you can never tell that it's just a rock jammed into itself, or even that it's the same rock jammed into itself. So here we go. I'll make it a little bit windy, just to show off the spline tool a bit more for you guys. Something like this. That's not too bad. And then I'll just make a nice exit here off the side. Alright, cool. Let's go with that. If you want, you can paint a little bit more terrain materials onto here, just so there's something underneath it. And I'm not quite sure what's going on with these holes here. Something with my visibility. It's really strange. Let me take a look at this really quick and I'll be right back. Hey guys, we're back, and I actually found a solution online to what causes this crazy flickering, and it's actually a bug in the engine and completely unrelated to my pack. So what I showed you earlier about the holes, just go ahead and leave the fix in there, and if you just go to terrain and sculpt, and as soon as you start sculpting, it fixes the problem. And so basically the bug is called the flat terrain bug, and if you have any parts of your terrain that don't have any interaction or sculpting applied to them, then you get some weird drops in the engine. And it's really strange, and I don't understand it, but I guess someone already submitted a bug online even, so this is most likely being looked into. But I'm glad that we ran into it while I'm making this video, so in case you guys run into it, now you know the answer to it and you can fix it. Also, you'll see some of these back and forth crisscross lines here. Once you bake or build the level, those will go away. That's only just for a moment before you make adjustments or changes, and they're kind of just temporarily in there. But they'll definitely go away as soon as you build your level. Don't worry about that. So let's go ahead and finally make this river here. Alright, so in your spline blueprints, you can just drag and drop master river spline into the level. And it'll be right here. It's kind of small, so you can actually scale it if you want, just by hand like this. And there's also options to scale it per spline point too. So we'll go ahead and start laying this out here. And look at that, it already creates a waterfall for you just by lowering it down. Super simple, everything's done for you basically automatically. I'll go ahead and bring the terrain down here a bit to make this work better, so you can see the water. Awesome. Looks good. And let's go back into our asset mode, and we can just make the waterfall come right off the side here, just all the way down wherever you want it to end. And I'll actually be implementing a feature later that will hopefully add effects for you, so it's not just the material doing its thing, but we'll actually be getting some effects in here, and that'll, I think, look a lot better for everybody. So I'm excited about that one. So the river's really easy. That's about it. You just place it and it's done. If you want to increase the minimum speed, right off to the right here, you can just increase that slowly but surely to whatever minimum speed you want. 10's pretty good, so I'll stick with 10, and we got ourselves a river. Any more settings that you would want to adjust to it can all be found under Materials, Water, and it's called River Flow B. And inside of there you'll get all kinds of stuff. You can turn a cube map on and off, the edge opacity on and off. You can turn off the water distortion. The water tiling is actually adjusted on the blueprint, so once you select that, you can adjust the water tiling horizontally and the overall water tiling. Let's really quickly also show you, so if you want to scale the river here, you have to count how many spline points down it is. So there's 1 at the beginning, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's the 5th spline point. And right here under River Scale Spline, you'll see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it starts at 0, so we're actually going to use number 4. And you can scale the river here to 0.1, 0.5, and it actually goes along with the scaling. So you'll see it tiles inwards like that, and it looks kind of cool because then the river is always going right along the edge there, and it never actually cuts into rocks, because you'll see a lot of games where the rivers just go straight into the flow goes right into the rocks, and it looks really odd. Like the flow will just do this and just go straight into the rocks, and that's just not how rivers work. So this river actually works the way that it should for you. Let's take a look at some of the other material instances and some of the options you have with them. So for grass, and this goes for the leaves as well, you can add actually variations to it. Parts of darkening, the translucency, lightening, and variation tiling. And this is all procedurally done as well, just based off a world space map, that it'll lighten the foliage or darken the foliage and tile the map more or less right here. And there's a few other options. You'll want to go through and check out all these yourself at some point and see what cool options there are for you. I've included a lot of shaders, instances, versions, textures. There's a lot of goodies in here that you guys should definitely check out when you get a chance. And here's all the wood materials. There's different versions. There's spline versions, and then there's just standard versions that don't use splines. And you can adjust that inside of the material instance it says is spline material, and it'll be checked to yes if it is a spline material, and you can just uncheck that if it's not a spline material, and you'll lose all that spline information off of there. So let's go ahead and check that back to spline material, and let's create a tree. Let's do that. Yeah. So one of the easiest trees to make, we'll use the branch spline. Just click and drag it right into the level, just like the river. And it starts off just like this. To make the trunk, we'll actually rotate the whole thing upwards like this, the whole spline, and now we can grab it. And in order for your branches to appear, we're going to need at least 3 spline points. So you can just hold Alt and click and drag, and now we have 3 spline points. So cool. Let's go ahead and make the tree a bit taller. This is going to be a really simple tree. There's more complex ones you can make as well. You can really do whatever you want with this. Like, it's a spline, so you can make the tree any shape or angle. Then off in your options here, the start scale, let's start off like at 3, sounds good. And the end scale, 0.5, make it a little smaller. You could change the meshes if you want to change these to ones you've created. You'll just need to make sure the UVs tile 1 to 1. And here's an end mesh. It's important they tile 1 to 1 so that all the textures line up when you're creating the spline. And so you'll see this tiles perfectly and it just works well. So make sure that that's what you do. If you ever create meshes, it's a 1-to-1 tiling cylinder. And then you can swap out the material right here on the spline as well to anything that says spline. So there's a distant spline version that's cheaper. There's a different type of tree here. We can switch to that one, and you'll see it's a different tree bark texture. So there's different versions here for whatever you want to make. We'll go ahead and use a spline for this one. You can also adjust the tiling of the texture vertically or horizontally along it to whatever you want. There's another option for tessellation, so you can make it super tessellated like the scale, or a smaller tessellation, and I go with about 20 or 25 usually. Right here we can add the branches, so I'm going to click that checkbox and it adds the branches, and you'll notice that they start off actually as these branches that come out sideways like this, and that's because for the most part when I create the trees, these branches are coming out of the tops of the tree trunks like this. And so I had them initially just set up to just come out horizontally. But we'll do a tree like that later. Right now, we're going to do it this way. So you have options for the rotation of the branches as well. You can make them go around the tree with a different rotation. So we'll actually, the yaw is this, it's this direction, like like around the trunk of the tree or the sides of the branch. And the yaw variation is how far around it can randomly generate. So we'll make this 360, so it can go around the entire tree. And the pitch here is actually what we're looking for to make it like a vertical tree like this. We're going to go with -90 and add a few more branches on here. So number of branches, we'll do just 100 for this demonstration. And underneath that, there's actually branch start distance along spline. So right now it's starting at the very bottom of the spline. Let's change this to 20. And now it starts at about this point here. Let's also change the scale here of the branches. So the minimum, let's do 1, and the maximum, let's do 1. And I have it set up specifically that as it gets towards the end, it slowly decreases in scale. So even though it says minimum 1 and max 1, they're slowly getting smaller up towards the top. And I just did that to make it easier for people and also for realism, so you don't have as much to worry about. So let's keep that 1.2 just to get a little bit more variation in there. And we can scale it up a little higher too if we want, just like that. And now you'll notice they're all pretty flat though, right across, just going across right now. So we can change that as well with the roll. Sorry about that. I think the roll is going to be, oh yeah, okay, actually the roll is dependent on if it comes straight out like this or if it goes at different angles, vertically and down, up and down basically. So yeah, we'll keep the variation for that at like 20 seems about right. So you'll get some that come down and they don't come straight out. And the pitch here, we'll do a variation on this one of about 10. And now we got a pretty interesting looking tree already. And it's got wind on it, and you can adjust it at any time, and it'll, as you adjust it, it randomly generates the branches again. So let's go ahead and make this a super tall pine tree like this or something, and increase the scale, the max scale. Let's try 1.5. We're also going to increase the number of branches. Let's do 150. I'm just messing with some of the numbers here just to get just a more interesting looking tree for us. And there we go. I'd say that's pretty good. And now as you hold Alt with the splines, with the whole spline selected, so click off, click back on it. If you hold Alt and drag just to duplicate it, so now you have two completely different trees because these branches are going to randomly generate each time. And you can change that, the branch start distance as well, to make that slightly different. We can adjust the wind here too. So let's make it a little bit higher. Maybe just crazy to see how it looks. So you can make it really crazy if you want, but let's not do that. So we'll have the wind at maybe 2. And if you just adjust any of the numbers, your branches will change. So you can keep adjusting until you find branches that you like. There we go. So there's some really simple trees we just made. Let's take a break and be right back again, and I'll show you how to make one of those jungle looking trees. Hey guys, back again. So lastly, I'll show you how to make here one of the jungle type trees. So we'll start off with the tree root spline. Bam, got it in. Alright, so this will be our trunk here. I've gone ahead and vertically rotated again, and I'm using the root spline. So for the trunk, I'm just going to bring this up, make kind of an interesting shape with it, and have it taper off somewhere like this. That should be good. Let's go with that. Okay, so I'll adjust some of the settings again. Something like that looks good. And adjust some of these texture tiling here. .5. That looks good. And from here we can start making the roots. So we'll use the same root spline that I just had. Start off the rotation with the direction I want it to go. And we'll get right into it. I might speed this up a bit for you, just so you can see it a lot quicker. Hey guys, so there's just a quick example of how to make one of those jungle looking trees. And you can basically turn these into whatever you want, as many branches as you want, make whatever look you want. It's all yours to do whatever you want with. Tons of variety, tons of options, tons of fun. And the last one is the vine spline. But that, for the most part, works the same as all the other splines now that you're probably familiar with. And so I'll just really quickly here show you the vine spline as well. It has all the same options, the texture tiling, adding branches. In this case, it's adding leaves. And you can swap those branch meshes for whatever you want. Leaves vine 3, leaves vine 3, 1. There's different options, different things in there for you. And a lot of cool stuff that you can get from it as well. So we'll make this a bit bigger. We'll just do 100, just make it nice and crazy. And it'll just randomly pick between all the different options that you're selecting. And you'll get some cool stuff with it. So just have some fun with that. Other than that, the only other feature I may not have showed is most likely the tree twist. So just like we scaled the river, you can count the spline points, 1, 2. So we'll use this one right here, so 1, 2, and we can twist parts of the tree. So you'll notice it actually twists it for you. You can make the twist really crazy, but that's just so you can get a different look to the different parts of your trees, and just another feature to throw in there to add to your arsenal. You can always feel free to ask me any questions, send me an email, and thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the pack, and hope you guys have fun with it. Alright, take care. PurePolygons signing off.